Have you ever sat quietly, listening to a conversation between your grandchildren or younger neighbors, and thought to yourself, what happened to the world I used to know? Maybe it's the way they talk, how they dress, what they post online, or even who they choose to love. If you've ever felt like you just don't understand today's generation, you are not alone. And the truth is, it's not just about values or beliefs. It goes deeper than that. There's something about watching the world change in ways we never imagined that can make us feel like we're being left behind, or worse, like we don't belong anymore. Growing older means carrying decades of memories, lessons, and habits that shaped who we are. We were taught to respect elders, to hide certain feelings, to marry young, to follow rules without question. So when we see young people today challenging norms, speaking up loudly, living openly, or even choosing paths that would have been unthinkable in our youth, it can feel jarring. Sometimes it even feels like they're throwing away everything we fought to build. But here's the thing. Maybe they're not disrespecting the past. Maybe they're trying to survive the present in a way that makes sense to them. Let me tell you a story. Howard, 82, from Cincinnati, Ohio, told me something I'll never forget. He said, "My grandson came out as non-binary. I didn't even know what that meant. I got angry. Not because I hated him, but because I felt stupid. I felt like I didn't know how to love him right anymore." And that, right there, is what so many seniors experience. Not hate, not judgment, but fear. Fear of saying the wrong thing. Fear of not understanding. Fear of losing connection with the people they love the most. And sometimes, that fear is layered with confusion that feels impossible to untangle. Marion, 69, from Lubbock, Texas, shared one of the most vulnerable stories I've heard. Her granddaughter Laura came out as transgender and asked to be called Lucas. "I tried to be understanding," Marion said. He started dating girls, and I was trying to wrap my head around that. It didn't make sense to me, but I didn't want to reject her." Then came a moment that pushed Marion's understanding to the edge. "I had gone on a work trip and left Lucas in charge of watering the garden and watching Sunny, my golden retriever. I came back a day early and walked into my living room and found Lucas on the couch with a boy, clearly in the middle of something intimate. I froze. My mind just couldn't compute it. First, she wanted to be a boy. Then she was dating girls. Now there was a boy? On my couch? I didn't know what to say. If my husband had still been alive, I don't think he would have known what to do either. It's not hate," she said. "It's just, I don't know how to make sense of it all." That's a sentiment more common than we think. It's not always resistance or rejection. Sometimes it's simply overload. The speed of change, the complexity of new identities, the pressure to get everything right. It can feel like too much, too fast. But Marion, despite her shock, chose to stay. She sat down with Lucas later that week, and even though the conversation was clumsy and awkward, it opened a door. A small one, but it was a start. The truth is, every generation thinks the next one is doing it wrong. Our parents said it about us, and we're tempted to say it about them. But what if instead of judging, we got curious? What if we remembered that our parents once didn't understand our music, our fashion, or our dreams, and yet we made it work? What if we could do the same now? But I get it, it's not easy. Especially when things move so fast. New words, new identities, new technology, new values. It can feel like learning a whole new language without a teacher. That's why some of us retreat. We stay quiet at dinner. We nod, even when we don't understand. Or worse, we shut down. But silence doesn't protect us. It only widens the gap. Real connection starts with honest conversation, and sometimes the courage to admit, "I don't understand this, but I want to." Margaret, 76, from San Diego, California, said something powerful. "I used to roll my eyes at my granddaughter's activism, climate marches, pride parades, you name it. Then one day she looked at me and said, "Grandma, didn't you fight for anything when you were young?" And it hit me. I had. I just forgot that rebellion lives in every generation. It just wears different clothes. So, if you've ever felt disconnected or frustrated by the world today, that doesn't make you old-fashioned. It makes you human. And being human means we're always learning, always adapting, even at 70, 80, or 90. But the moment we stop trying to understand, we stop growing. And that's when bitterness creeps in. That's when loneliness grows. And that's when we lose the most important thing we still have, our influence. Because here's something beautiful. When an elder chooses compassion over criticism, people listen. When you say, "Tell me more about that," instead of, "That's not how we used to do it," you build a bridge. You keep your place in their world. And maybe, just maybe, you help them become better, just like someone once helped you. Have you ever had a moment when you felt left out of your own family's world? Maybe you heard something you didn't agree with and stayed silent, or maybe you spoke up and it caused distance. If that's ever happened to you, I want you to share it in the comments, because this channel is about honesty, about growth, about understanding the beauty and the challenge of aging in a world that doesn't slow down. And if you believe, like I do, that there's still so much we can give, so much we can learn, and so much we can heal, then please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your story matters, your voice matters, and together we're building a community where wisdom meets compassion, not judgment. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, "I just don't understand these young people anymore"? Maybe it's the way they dress, how they talk, what they post online, or the things they fight for. It's easy to feel like the world has shifted under our feet, and in many ways, it has. But here's a truth we often overlook. Every generation was once misunderstood. What's different now is how quickly change is happening, and how deeply it affects everything from relationships to identity. Let's talk about one of the hardest shifts for many seniors to accept: how openly younger people talk about topics we were raised to keep private, especially around gender, sexuality, and emotional expression. It can feel jarring, confusing, even offensive at first, but pause for a moment and ask yourself this. When you were younger, weren't there things you believed in that your parents didn't understand? Weren't there battles you fought that they couldn't see the point of? History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, and every generation pushes for something new. Take Harold, 81, from Columbus, Ohio. He told me about his grandson who came out as non-binary and asked to be called by a new name. At first, I thought it was just a phase, Harold admitted. I even joked about it, but then I saw how deeply it mattered to them. When I stopped trying to correct and started trying to understand, I got my grandchild back. That's what mattered most. It takes humility to admit that our way isn't the only way, but it takes wisdom to realize that love doesn't always look the same. It evolves. And sometimes the deepest form of love isn't agreement, but presence, just being there, listening, refusing to let confusion turn into division. Another big hurdle? Technology, social media, digital everything. For many seniors, this world feels alien. Why would someone share their private life with strangers? Why are kids glued to screens instead of talking face to face? But here's something surprising. Some of those posts and messages are the very tools younger people use to connect. It may look different from how we built relationships, but the need behind it is the same: to be seen, to be heard, to belong. Barbara, 73, from Atlanta, Georgia, felt this disconnect deeply. My granddaughter barely looked up from her phone, she said. I thought she didn't care, but then one day she showed me a video she made about our family history. It had photos, music, stories, stuff I'd told her years ago. Turns out she'd been listening all along, just in her own way. Now that doesn't mean we have to embrace everything without question. It's okay to feel unsettled by the speed of change. But when judgment becomes the loudest voice in the room, we risk losing the very people we love most. There's a difference between holding on to your values and refusing to grow. And often, that difference is found in how we listen. So here's something powerful to remember. Your wisdom matters, but so does your curiosity. When you ask questions without attacking, when you show interest without trying to control, you create space for connection. You don't have to understand everything to offer love. You just have to be willing to keep your heart open. Let's pause here for a moment. Have you ever felt lost in a conversation with a younger family member? Like the words they're using or the choices they're making don't make sense to you at all? That's normal, but it's also an invitation to ask, to learn, to stay connected in new ways. If this part of the video is resonating with you, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story, your questions, or even your struggles with this generational shift. And if you're finding value here, please give this video a like and subscribe. Your support helps this channel reach more hearts just like yours. Let's keep going. There's another truth that often goes unspoken. Fear. Many seniors don't talk about it, but deep down, there's a fear of becoming irrelevant, of being left behind, of waking up one day and realizing that the world no longer needs what you have to offer. That fear can harden into criticism, into resistance, into things were better in my day. But here's the thing, the world does need you. It needs your stories, your strength, your perspective. What it doesn't need is for you to give up on the possibility of learning something new. Growth isn't just for the young, it's for the wise. And no matter how many years you've lived, there's still time to grow. Thomas, 79, from Denver, Colorado, put it best. When I stopped trying to fix my grandkids and started asking them to teach me, our relationship changed. I didn't lose my authority, I gained their respect. And isn't that what we all want, in the end? To be seen, to be valued, to be remembered not just for what we taught, but for how we loved. You know, one of the most powerful things I've learned, especially from listening to people in their 70s, 80s, and even 90s, is that wisdom doesn't always come from having the right answers. Sometimes it comes from asking the right questions. When did we stop being curious? When did we start believing that just because we've lived longer, we no longer have anything to learn? And I get it. When you've seen wars, raised children, worked hard, buried loved ones, and watched the world spin in ways you never imagined, it's easy to feel like you've earned the right to say, I know better. And in many ways, you do know better. You've lived through real life. But sometimes the younger generation isn't looking for someone to correct them. They're just hoping for someone who will love them through the confusion. Let's talk about one of the most personal struggles many seniors quietly face: seeing someone in the family come out as gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or something in between. For many older adults, this feels unfamiliar or even uncomfortable. Not because they're hateful or close-minded, but because they were raised in a world where those conversations didn't happen, where being different meant being invisible, where silence was survival. Gloria, 83, from San Antonio, Texas, told me something that shook me. When my grandson came out as gay, I didn't know how to react. I wasn't angry, just afraid. Afraid that I'd say the wrong thing, that I'd lose him if I said what I really felt, or worse, that I'd lose him if I stayed silent. And that's the weight many older people carry, not hatred, hesitation, a fear of hurting someone they love, a fear of being judged for asking, "Can you explain this to me?" But the truth is, that question, that one simple question, is often all it takes to build a bridge. Not long ago, a 76-year-old man named Walter from Milwaukee shared a story that nearly brought me to tears. "My granddaughter transitioned," he said. She asked us to start calling her by a new name. I didn't understand it. I didn't know how to say it without stumbling. But I saw how hard it was for her to even ask. So I looked her in the eyes and said, I might get it wrong, but I'll try every day, because I love you more than my pride. That's not a weakness. That's courage. That's love. The truth is, the world isn't asking us to change everything we believe overnight. It's asking us to soften, to stay open, to let love lead, even when understanding comes later. It's not about abandoning your values. It's about expanding your capacity to love in ways that weren't taught to you when you were young. And here's something we forget. Today's young people aren't just different. They're braver than many of us were allowed to be. They speak up. They cry in public. They fight for causes. They embrace imperfections. They challenge traditions we never questioned. That might seem disrespectful to some, but in many cases, it's a sign of growth. Remember when long hair on men was rebellious? When interracial marriage was controversial? When divorce was shameful? Now think about how those things have changed. What seemed radical back then is normal now. What seems strange today might be tomorrow's standard of compassion. So if you're struggling to make sense of this new generation, if you feel like you don't recognize the world anymore, know this. It's okay. It's okay to feel unsure. It's okay to grieve the simplicity of how things used to be. But don't let that grief harden your heart. Because behind every tattooed teenager, every rainbow flag, every loud opinion, there's a human being looking for belonging, just like we were. And the truth? They need us. They need our stories. They need our guidance. They need our steadiness. But they'll only come to us if they know we'll listen without shame. If we become safe spaces, not perfect ones, just willing ones. Let's pause for a second. If something in your heart is stirring right now, maybe a memory, maybe a struggle, maybe a regret, I want you to know this. You're not alone. There are so many seniors out there wrestling with these same feelings, silently, in the quiet corners of their homes. If that's you, I want to invite you to do something brave. Leave a comment, share your heart, or even just let someone else's story soften yours. And if this video is speaking to you in any way, please hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us reach more people who are trying to grow, connect, and heal, just like you. Let's make this a place where older hearts and younger voices don't have to be at war, where we can learn from each other, even when we don't always agree. Because in the end, we're not here to change each other. We're here to love each other while we change ourselves. I want to take a moment and speak to the part of you that feels tired, not the body. Though yes, we all carry our aches and pains, but the part of you that's tired of the noise, the changes, the opinions, the speed at which the world seems to move now, without asking permission, without waiting for you to catch up. You're not wrong to feel that way, but here's the hard truth. Time doesn't slow down for any of us, and trying to stop the world from spinning faster only leaves us dizzy. What brings peace isn't stopping the world. It's learning how to stand still inside it. One of the most liberating things we can do as we get older is to admit that we don't have to understand everything to be kind. You don't have to fully agree with your grandson's choices, your neighbor's pronouns, or your granddaughter's activism, but you can decide to lead with compassion instead of criticism, curiosity instead of control, connection instead of conflict. And let me tell you something I've seen time and time again. When an older person says, "I don't understand, but I want to learn," you would not believe the doors that open, walls that fall, tears that are wiped away. That sentence, just that one, is a bridge between generations. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present. When we grew up, silence was survival. You kept things to yourself. You endured. You pushed forward. You didn't talk about feelings, and you certainly didn't challenge tradition. But now, This generation is breaking silence. They're talking, crying, marching, dreaming, and yes, sometimes doing it clumsily, loudly, or recklessly. But they're doing it because they want more. Not just for themselves, but for the world.